What if I told you that one grandmother's simple answer on Family Feud stopped the entire show and made millions of people around the world cry? This is the story of Rose Williams, a 78-year-old who turned heartbreak into hope and showed us that love doesn't die. It only changes shape.
It was April 20th, 2023, a Thursday, though to me it felt like yesterday. My family and I had been chosen to appear on Family Feud. To be frank with you, I didn't want to go. I told my children, Lord have mercy, I'm too old for game shows. Let the young people play. But my grandchildren begged me, and one of them said, Grandma Rose, your wisdom and your sense of humor will be just right. We need you. So I relented. After all, when your grandkids want something with big hopeful eyes, you don't have the heart to say no. I wore my best church dress, the one I saved for Easter Sunday. I brushed my thinning hair and tugged it up into the clips. And in front of the mirror, I whispered a little prayer. Lord, let me please my family well today. Let me make them happy. Walking into that Atlanta studio, I felt the lights on my skin, the crowd energy buzzing like electricity. My knees no longer what they used to be. I took it slowly, step by step. But I kept my head held high, because age may slough the body, but it need not bow the spirit. Steve Harvey welcomed us, his grin big and welcoming. And when he looked at me, I made the decision that I would welcome him with humor. I told him, Mr. Steve, I've been seeing you since you still had hair. The crowd laughed. Steve leaned over laughing, and at that time, I felt home. He said I was a treasure. And I'll say it meant something to me. You see, when you work for decades, pouring yourself into children in classrooms, bringing up your own babies, and assisting the neighbor children as well, you don't feel like much of anything. You're just doing your job. To have somebody tell me that, on the national news, it made my heart feel good. When Steve asked me about my family, I answered with pride. 14 grandchildren by blood, Mr. Steve, but I've possibly brought up 30 children altogether. You see, when you have taught for 42 years, every child is your child. And the thing is, that's the way I've lived my whole life. Every child who entered my classroom, I treated them as somebody's baby, deserving of love, care, and patience. The crowd clapped and the love came in. My family was diligent that day. My grandson Marcus was swift and bright. I cheered at every answer, even the bad ones. That's what grandmas do. We cheer when you get it wrong. When it came down to fast money, Marcus had a score of 156 points. So it was up to me now. We needed to score 44 points in order to bring home the $20,000. Steve looked over at me and said, Mrs. Rose, you ready to bring it home for the Williams family? I gave him a smile and said, I'm ready, Mr. Steve, and I didn't say it jokingly. After everything life had handed me, $44 on a game show were the easiest exam I'd taken in years. There at the microphone, the lights shining bright overhead, I was calm. You see, after 78 years of living, one gets accustomed to having one's wits about one, even when the world would like you to go all trembly. Steve started asking questions, and I answered quickly, name something people do to relax. Read a book, I replied. The board flashed. The audience clapped. Name a place people go on vacation. The beach. Another correct response. Points mounting, my family cheering on, their voices echoing in my head like a refrain. Name something you might find in a grandmother's purse. I smiled. Candy. The audience chuckled because they recognized it as true. I always had peppermint for the kids in my purse. By then, I had already gained enough points to win the game. The studio was filled with joy, my family jumping and hugging one another, the audience standing on their feet. But Steve had 2 more questions. And it was the 4th question that unlocked the door to my heart. He leaned forward and asked, Mrs. Rose, tell me something you do every day to show your love for your family. It was the easiest question of them all. Cook for them. Hug them. Tell them I love you. Most would respond, that's what they do. When I opened my mouth, though no spontaneous reply came, I was instead struck with the memories of decades on my chest. I looked at Steve, then at my children and grandchildren standing a few feet away from me, then out at the hundreds of faces in the crowd. My smile disappeared. My throat closed. And finally, I said softly, I pray for each of them by name every night. Even the ones who aren't here anymore. The room went quiet. So quiet, I could actually hear someone sniff in the crowd. Steve put down his cards and walked towards me. His voice low. Mrs. Rose, what do you mean, the ones who aren't here anymore? Tears filled my eyes, but my voice remained strong. I told him, Mr. Steve, I've lost 3 of my children and 2 grandchildren in the last decade. But I still pray for them each night. Because love doesn't end when someone goes to heaven. You could hear the gasp travel across the studio. And then silence. Heavy, holy silence. I began to explain. My youngest son, David, just 28 years old, passed away in Afghanistan. An army sergeant. A good boy who never came home. My daughter, Lisa, my sweet girl, passed away in 2018 from breast cancer. She was only 45. She left behind 3 children missing their mother's hug. Then there was Michael, my son who could brighten up a room with his laughter alone. In 2020, a drunken driver stole him from me. He was coming back from work, doing nothing illegal. That same accident claimed 2 of my grandkids too, and the infants. My little Anthony, born with a congenital heart defect. He lived but 6 months. And my granddaughter Sarah, 7 years old, when a stray bullet took her out of this world. I slowly said each name, making them hold, because to me those names were living. My family cried. The other family cried. Even the crew, men and women who'd worked on that show for years, wiped at their eyes. Steve Harvey, a man who had heard thousands of tailies on that stage, could not speak long enough. His lips trembled and his eyes were wet. Finally, he asked, Mrs. Rose, how do you keep going after all that? How do you still smile? I looked at him and I looked at my family and I said, because I learned that grief and thankfulness can go hand in hand in the same heart. Yes, I miss my babies every day, but I still have 11 grandchildren who need their Grandma Rose. I still have 2 children who call me every day. I still have a purpose. And when I pray for David, for Lisa, for Michael, for little Anthony, and for sweet Sarah, they're alive in my heart. Love doesn't die. It just takes on a different form. And at that moment, Steve did what no one was anticipating. He descended from his podium, walked over to me, and hugged me hard. And the whole audience jumped up, clapping, crying, cheering. The other family, the Rodriguezes, our opponents that day, came over and embraced me too. Maria Rodriguez looked at me with tears streaming down her face and said, You're not just the Williams family's grandmother anymore. You're ours too. When Steve Harvey hugged me on that stage, it wasn't just a host comforting a contestant. It was a man recognizing the weight of another soul. And when the Rodriguez family came and embraced me, I experienced something I had not felt in quite a while. The power of strangers sharing your burden with you. The studio was weeping. The cameras kept rolling, but the crew couldn't help crying themselves. For nearly a decade, the show came to a halt because nobody could keep going. Folks were wiping tears from their faces, grasping hands, praying in their heads. It wasn't a game show anymore. It was Heart Dad after things died down. Steve came back to me and said, Mrs. Rose, you've already given us something worth so much more than money. But let's tie this up. He asked me the last fast money question. Name something that makes a house feel like home. I immediately answered without hesitation. The people who love each other in it, whether they're still with you or watching from heaven. The board displayed family photos, and the audience clapped. Steve smiled and said, "That's close enough." Pictures, prayers, love, they're all the same. My family had already won the $20,000, but what we really won was something that could not be quantified. 6 weeks elapsed before the episode aired. I did not think much about it. To me, it was merely another episode in my life. A sad one, I suppose, but also a proof of love. But when that clip reached the world, Lord have mercy, millions of people shared it. Within a week, it had been viewed over 100 million times. People from countries I've never even heard of were writing letters and leaving messages. They said my words had helped them. They said my story reminded them they weren't alone. Someone started a hashtag pray for them by name. And in one night, individuals everywhere in the world were posting pictures of their dead loved ones. Wives, husbands, children, friends. They wrote, "I still pray for you. I still call your name every night." I was sitting in my little house in Birmingham reading those messages with tears streaming down my face. My sorrow had arrived at the sorrow of others, and we had produced something beautiful out of suffering together. One woman wrote to me, "Mrs. Rose, my husband died last year, and I felt crazy still putting out a place for him at the table. But when I heard you say you pray for yours, I know love doesn't die." Thank you. Another woman wrote, "My little boy died of cancer. For months, I cursed myself for talking to him as if he were alive. But today I see he's still part of our family story." Those letters were my memento. Each was proof that sadness and gratitude could indeed exist together. As I had professed on that stage, 6 months later, I was asked to come back for a special Heroes Edition Family Feud. I did not walk onto that stage alone this time. All 11 of my remaining grandchildren came with me. When we emerged, the audience rose up, clapping, cheering, some even crying before the game had started. Steve looked at me and asked, "Mrs. Rose, how are you doing?" And I answered, "Mr. Steve, I'm so fortunate." Something amazing happened the day we were here before. Individuals everywhere in the world told me about their own angels occupying heaven. My babies and I made people less lonely. It was true. Out of my pain, God had created a ministry, not a building with walls, but a ministry of hearts bound together by love and moss. Shortly thereafter, with the backing of my family and of Steve himself, we set up the Rose Williams Foundation for Grieving Families. Our catchphrase was spoken from my lips that day. Love doesn't die when people die. It just changes shape. We began offering support groups, counseling, and safe places for those who had lost more than one loved one. And I will tell you what, those support groups were packed quicker than anything. People came with their brokenness, and we, together, learned how to help each other. Steve Harvey became our first donor and even sits on the board. Imagine that a grandmother from Birmingham, Alabama, working side by side with a world-famous comedian to help grieving families heal. Life is funny that way. Every night before I go to bed, I do the same thing I've done for decades. I kneel down slowly because these old knees don't bend like they used to, and I start calling names. I breathe every child's name, every grandchild's name, as though they were rosary beads. Soft and distinct, one at a time. I pray for their health, their safety, and for their future. And when I reach the names of the ones who are not here anymore, I do not skip them. I reply, "Lord, protect David, give him peace. Squeeze Lisa in your arms. Guard Michael. Cradle baby Anthony in your arms. Make Sarah's laughter echo in heaven." They ask me sometimes, "Mrs. Rose, doesn't it hurt to say their names every day? Doesn't it open the wound at night?" And I tell them, "Child, the wound never heals. But speaking their names keeps them alive to me. Love doesn't die. It just changes shape. Some nights I weep during prayer. The tears fall on the bedsheet and my chest heaves. Some nights, however, I grin remembering how Michael sang off-key or how Sarah danced in the kitchen with a spoon as a microphone. Sadness and gratitude coexisting simultaneously. Shaking hands in my heart. My grandchildren, the ones still alive, they've witnessed me doing this. My oldest granddaughter, Jasmine, came into my bedroom one night and caught me on my knees. She asked me, "Grandma, why are you praying for people who aren't here anymore?" I looked at her and said to her, "Because, baby, they're still ours. They're still yours. When you're lost, when you're weak, remember you've got an entire army waiting for you in heaven." She hugged me, sobbing, and whispered, "Grandma, I want to be like you when I'm old." It was then that I realized something important. My life is not so much about enduring my own grief. It's about figuring out how to educate my grandchildren and anyone who will hear me that you don't have to let sorrow consume you. You can live with it, travel alongside it, and still be joyful. When the letters started coming in after the show, my grandchildren sat with me and read them aloud. We heard stories of widows, of mothers who had lost children, of people who still kept shoes by the door for someone who would never come home again. One letter that heart-wrote me was from a young woman in Ohio. She wrote, "Mrs. Rose, I lost my baby boy last year. People tell me to move on, not mention him anymore. But when you said you still pray for your grandchildren, even those heaven-bound, I felt that you gave me the permission to love my child until death. Thank you." I held that letter close to my heart and cried. For is that not what we all want? Permission to keep on loving those we've lost. A fellow wrote to me, "I lost my wife, and every night still I say goodnight to her picture. For months I felt foolish, but you reminded me that love does not die with death." Those words made me realize that my story wasn't mine alone anymore. It belonged to a world of grieving souls looking for light. And my grandchildren, oh, how they've grown to see me differently. To them, I'm not just Grandma Rose who bakes cornbread and sneaks them candy from her purse. I'm living proof that brokenness can still carry beauty, that despair can still sing. They might say, sometimes, "Grandma, you're the strongest person we know," but I always clarify, "No, babies. I'm not strong because I don't cry. I'm strong because I cry and then I keep going. I'm strong because I let love be bigger than my pain. That is the message I want them to carry, with them far beyond when I'm gone." The day that I was standing on that platform with Steve Harvey, I did not believe that I was there to help my family win money. Something that I did not realize is that God was orchestrating something much bigger. After the show was aired and the world responded, my children and grandchildren sat me down and said, "Grandma, you can't quit here. People need you. Families need hope." And that was how the Rose Williams Foundation for Bereaved Families was born. We started small, a few meetings in a church basement, coffee brewing in the corner, chairs in a circle. People would come in with photos in hand, creased pieces of paper, or sometimes just the weight of grief. At first, no one knew what to say. But then some brave heart would speak up, and the tears would start. And the voices came afterwards, widows, fathers, mothers, brothers. They'd tell their own stories, and you could almost hear the weight lift from their shoulders. Because in that room, no one had to pretend to be okay. Our motto, written there on the wall, was my own reality. Love does not die when people die. It just changes shape. Before long, we had counselors, ministers, and even children's clubs. We helped families coordinate memorials. We spent time with people on birthdays and anniversaries. We set up scholarships in the names of loved ones who had died. We were no longer simply enduring grieving. We were building futures out of it. Steve Harvey personally was our initial major donor. He said to us, "Mrs. Rose, the world needs your strength. I want to stand with you." He even sits on our board of directors today. Can you imagine that? A Burman grandmother alongside a man the whole world knows, because grief does not care who you are. It strikes us all the same dot and my grandchildren, how radiant with pride they are. When they enter that foundation building and see families embracing, children laughing again, or widows finding new strength, they understand their grandma's agony did not finish in tears. It worked into something wonderful, something redemptive. Occasionally, reporters ask me, "Mrs. Rose, what's your secret? How do you stay so strong after all this grief?" And I always tell them the same thing. I'm not strong because I don't break. I'm strong because I do break, but I don't stay broken. I let love glue the pieces back together. At evening, when the house becomes quiet, I still get down beside my bed. I still murmur all their names, the living and the dead. My prayers do not change. But what does change is this. I now realize there are thousands of us worldwide whispering names too. Parents praying for children, wives for husbands, children for parents. We are now a choir of love and sorrow, singing together like incense, and I would have you, whoever you may be hearing these words spoken by me now, remember this. Riches vanish, accolades grow old, fame is but a puff of smoke. But love, the love you give and the love you tend, that is what endures. I didn't appear on Family Feud to give the world a lesson, yet maybe God had that day in mind when he wanted it to happen. A straightforward question about family love became a testimony that went out to millions. So if there is one thing you take away from my story, let it be this. Grief and gratitude can live in the same heart. You can weep and smile on the same breath. And when you say the names of the ones you lost, you don't go crazy, you remain sane by keeping alive the love. This is the legacy that I would like to leave. Not fame, not riches, but love. So tonight, as always, I will kneel by my bed. I will softly speak the names of my children and grandchildren, David, Lisa, Michael, little Anthony, sweet Sarah, and all the rest still with me, for love does not die at the grave. Love has no deadline. Love is forever.